right. So I should have made this video a long time ago, and I mean years ago. And this is about the perspective of the world, and from the perspective of how we all kind of collectively live and survive in America. But it's really a world problem, and so I couldn't help but try to have some kind of feedback on the fact that the uh, the ex president has announced that he's going to run for president again. And I'm not going to make this all about Trump, because Trump is not really the problem at all. I mean, this is indicative of can customize your dashboard on live producer. Now you can customize what just happened. Keyframe rate too low. Keyframe rate is too low. Recommended keyframe rates hard to range. Learn more. What are you doing? Okay, so there's something popping up on my screen that's saying about the key learn. So I'm learning how to do this. But either way, the so the idea of all this is that I'm not as concerned about what I think is happening around all the political stuff by itself. It's more of a testament of what America has been shaped and how it is. And here's the thing: as much as I can kind of talk about all the things that I think is wrong with America, I'm forever trying to think of things that helps improve all communities. But being African American, obviously, and then always concerned about the welfare of African Americans, and pretty much as African Americans live in this country, pretty much how this country goes, and it's been that way. This is not something we waking up today to and everything else. This is the decade of the 2020, and so it's easy to kind of think about things and only think about what happened to you today, or what happened to other people today. And so, or just, what's going on in your own personal life. So the attempt of this type of videos and stuff that I'm going to be doing, and I don't care about the time, the length. I know we in the TikTok world, so everybody expects everything in 10 seconds, but that ain't practical or realistic. It's fun, and I'll hang out with the best of them in that world. But the reality is that most of us have real challenges and problems, and ain't much things overall fixing that overall. So I'm not one to complain about anything that won't have solutions or recommendations or research and all the rest of the stuff to be done. So I'm not just running my mouth. And so, and I'm not one of those people who don't show up with a plan. If anything, I'm gonna have a book of plans. And so make of it as you will. But the goal is, and what I'm in any discussion that I have, is to provide solutions to people, and to have some practical responses to sometimes what can be the madness of the world and just in our day-to-day lives. And so I'm not talking about something that I don't think that is removed from the way you got to feel or kind of exist in your world. And I'm not making an assumption that everybody's miserable. I definitely don't think that either. And I'm one of those people that I'm realistic about being realistic. I truly am motivated by knowing the details. And as much as other people get overwhelmed by that, I literally pretty much have some kind of quote for just about everything, right? Smart is not what you are, smart is what you do. And so in most things in life require some kind of process, not just a plan. You got to have some kind of process to how you kind of delegate and dictate and kind of decide on who's going to be in your life and for what reason, and what things you're going to have in your life, and what things you're going to participate in and not participate in. And so I can't help but start this today, right? And so just the madness that it's easy to say this is the Republican Party, because you can specifically pick at them and go, this madness, a list of things that they have, is not reflective of what humanity, just basic humanity, is, for what it looks like. If there's nothing greater in this life than us being concerned about each other, what else is there? What else is there, right? So I can't help but again, this is not about politics. This is about people. And this is about that, right at 50% of the people in this, who, at least people who participate in the election process, or the voting process, or the political process, or whatever you call it. Yeah, that's reflective of one thing. That's not the majority, that's not the overall majority of people, but still, they understand the outcomes of the impact. And so, so what does that look like for us every day, right? So obviously, we all, frustrated with, gas prices, food prices, just the prices of everything going up. And I can talk about that all day long, because there's really no overall justification coming for that. Even though they try to say the supply chain is messed up, and, the price of doing business is going up. That's all BS. And so, and I can go on with that about all day long. If you think about the framework in which businesses exist in and what it takes to actually produce a product, from raw materials to finished products to get it into the store to being marketed and purchased and all the rest of that stuff, that the cost of that stuff is minimal compared to why they're driving, their why businesses and corporations, and we don't talk about it enough. At the end of the day, they're behind most of the stuff that all of us are frustrated with. It really is not politics. Politics is just an extension of what corporate desires, and regionally and everywhere else. We almost could take it state by state is what we'd have, be able to do. Georgia's actually not the peach state. I live in Georgia, but we're not the peach state. You know what state is? South Carolina. So I mean, we just live in constant just marketing BS. And so, and as much as my tone may sound like I'm frustrated, it should. And so, but there's the calming thing inside of me is that I convert all the energy in me, good and bad, and just trying to come up with something that reflects the positiveness in what it is in life. And at the end of the day, too low FPS. Okay, this thing is giving me all kind of metrics saying that this system, I got to change the stuff on the system, but we're gonna go with this. And so the idea that this dude is going to run for president again, and nobody's kind of really saying, what is, really throwing this dude completely on the bus in regards to his reflection of society, so as a whole. And so, and again, I'm going to talk about that. Trump and all the Republican people, that, to me, they're just an embodiment of this. But I was thinking about it earlier today about how, if first of all, we don't understand the idea of being able to take care of children, mothers, and seniors. I ain't trying to say men don't need things. I'm definitely a man, and so I'm not trying to say men don't need things. But what it is that the strength of the community is based on those who take care of the community, who always have provided for the community, who have extended things to the community. So to have an idea, they'll have an entire group of people who seem to always be an objection of that, who seem to always have something where they're more concerned about the welfare of the corporations and their presence in our lives than understanding what does it take to take care of a child, what does it take to take care of a family and take care of those who typically provide for families. And I'm not automatically throwing everything in one big block and saying that women are the only ones who really take care of the household. That's not what I'm saying either. So we're going to speak in the generality of it, but for the most part, it's taking care of parents and specifically taking care of women when they take care of the household. And so reinforcing that, restricting that, and then taking that burden off of everybody else doesn't mean that we all of a sudden become some big socialist society or whatever else. But shoot, I mean, I don't know. When I think through what they describe as what they think is the issue of socialism, it's the version of socialism, because we can't coexist without a tax, and the tax system itself is a system of type of socialism, right? Where we throw all our money in one pool and then we have to try to figure out where all the money goes and where does that money go. See, this is the thing about it. Everybody concentrates on their tax returns, but nobody concentrates on when their taxes are sent in. Where does all those taxes go? So that's all part of the process of how the entire, federal finance system is set up. And so that's not a matter of some just random arbitrary, oh, we just send our money somewhere. So we typically don't get a class or a course on it, so we have no idea of what that actually means to the impact of our quality of life in some particular way. So so let's try to look at this for what it is, and the idea of where do we start? Where do we start with all this, right? So if you then look at, I'm gonna try to make this personal to each person, right? If you think about it, most of us don't think of our lives this way by our basic kind of travels of our week and our day, right? You go from your home or wherever you stay to trying to get the necessities of what you need to get through your basic day and your basic life, right? So how does this tie to the larger kind of balloon mushroom of stuff that your life goes into? Because we're so quick to look at things in an individual perspective. So you leave hopefully you're working, right now, what, 95% of the people that are able to work are working. And we don't think of it that way. We hear the unemployment number, but we forget that if 95% of the people are working, then we're talking about people who work, who are trying to get things done in their lives and get their bills paid for, to get their family taken care of, and then somewhere along the line have a little good time at the same time. So the idea is that how do we make that better so that you're not stressed and frustrated or can't have the ability to kind of find in more enjoyable things in your life. And so you then have to understand how that all is connected together, right? So obviously you get paid a certain amount of hour, or have a salary, or you're under contract, or you're self-employed, or you have your own business, whatever you're doing. But either way, you're trying to bring in some income so that you can do what? You can take care of your expenses, and then kind of like I said, get some of the good things in life. So, but if you keep it just that personal, then I'm telling you, you most likely are cheating yourself for 50% of this world that you deserve. That you deserve. And see, so the other side of it is, and then you got other people that'll come along and try to tell you that is not what you have ownership of. That makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense in the world. But if you leave it up to how the other half of the world describes that we should not benefit from the thing that we're contributing to, then who would do that? Who would do that healthily in any type of friendship, relationship, business, or anything else? Where you consistently, when you find out that for everything that you put in, that you should have gotten 50% more of everything that you're supposed to have got out of that circumstance or that situation. Now that most of us, I think, would be quite frustrated if you knew that somebody was taking 50% of everything that you were doing or wanted to do away from you. Somebody took 50% of your income, or took 50% of your joy and your happiness, or never gave it to you in the first place. So, in having said that, there shouldn't be a dispute in this society over whether everybody should have health care. Get that out of the way. I mean, I'm extremely just puzzled by the idea that, and I'm telling you, I'm going to talk about the institutions that reinforce this or don't do anything about it. We have got to start putting, it ain't the politicians that I'm as concerned about. I'm going to be straight up. I think it's more the pastors in our society that we should be more frustrated with. Who are you standing up for? What are you standing up for? And so, and where does that, so it doesn't extend beyond the parking lot of your church. It doesn't extend to the community that your church is in. I once heard somebody say to me once, and it was like, man, most of these churches could move away from the communities they in, and the community wouldn't even notice it. The community wouldn't even notice if your church got up and moved or left. And somehow I'm going to the heart of it, that if you have the spirit of someone willing to serve people, why would you not extend that to making sure that that the folks that are in need are taken care of, that they are seriously taken care of, and then yet they they get their hands in everything and then try to say they weren't involved. Then they will try to say they weren't involved. Now, one thing about it in this is there's no way around it. I mean, we absolutely live in a race-fueled society, a race-fueled society. That if you to the point where you're not recognizing your impact of race, white, black, or otherwise, and Hispanic and everything else, and anything else you want to kind of classify it in, which don't even get me started. There I can put a ton of links in this conversation about how at the end of the day, then it's people of African descent who generated all the different cultures and personalities and everything. I mean, history is just showing it, so that's not even debatable. Shouldn't be debatable, but it is, right? So let's bring it all current, keep it all current with what's going on. So as we kind of look to what sets up our lives the way it sets up, what is it that drives really how we make decisions about our lives every day, and yet because we've been raised to think that that's all on us. That's like, no, you made these decisions, you did this, you did that. But if you went in a grocery store and there was something, let's say that you really need some bread, and you go in the grocery store and they ain't got any bread, you figure out how to adjust and adapt. But is it your fault that the grocery store don't have any bread? Is it really your fault that the grocery store don't have any bread or have the resources and things that you need? But then but they're gonna put it on all of us that, hey, you didn't do what you needed to do, and it's not. That's rarely ever the case. None of us set the gas prices. None of us, and this other thing too. I mean, there's rarely anything in the grocery store whose price doesn't change. So did you have anything to do with that? That the last time you went in the grocery store bought the same amount of foods you paid $85 for, but now you're going in there and you're now paying $165 for that same thing of food. But yet somehow everything is supposed to be put on the fact that it's our somehow responsibility to take on more of these things in our lives. Now, there's an element of that. But we got to look at how the pie is really sliced up. I'm convinced that most of the things that most of us make decisions about in our lives only take up probably 35% of how we actually are able to make the decisions that we want to make in our lives. There's just no way around it. If your job said today you're never going to get another raise because we can't afford to give you one, and you're limited by how many other options you have to go get another job paying what you already make, and the possibility of you making more doing something else, most likely you're going to go get a second job because you're not going to have any leeway or play with what goes on at that job. But what that job may not be telling you is they may have made more money than they've ever made before, but they just don't have the money allocated to your department, or they're trying to remove your particular department. And so, again, so how much of that you're really responsible for? I am not trying to remove the responsibility. I'm trying to make sure that you're aware of what the real impact is. And how, I want to help people take some of that burden off themselves and quit blaming themselves for something that they may not have anything to do with at all. And so the idea of is that how do we do this in a way that it doesn't look and feel like rebellion? No, not insurrection. That's a whole different thing. But that it doesn't have to be a rebellion when it should be sound and just a sound discussion and sound logic for each one of us. So, my goal in having some of these conversations and stuff is to say, let's be practical. And let's call the real folks to the table who may be doing some of the things they're doing, and not necessarily, and let's hold some of the real power brokers and decision makers and industries. And again, politicians just pawns, overall they're pawns in the whole thing. And let's call out the things that really are making our lives a little bit more challenging than what they should be. I believe in the good faith of people overall. Most people are great people, decent people. Remember, there's only 5%, 6% at best. And so in the African American community, there's probably 8 or 9% because again, we last hired, first fired, and that's just reality. That's not me saying that because I'm African American or whatever. The real reality is that's how we come in, right? But still, at that 90-some%, 9 out of every 10 people are working. That can work. Good working people that's just trying to figure out a way to get some decent stuff out of life, and yet somehow we're held accountable for all the things that seem to can't just go right in our lives. They can't be right. The numbers don't add up. The formula just don't add up. The process just don't add up. But we have all these superficial things that distract us from what it is that may actually be the real things that are having the biggest push on our lives. And I'm saying that no, we need to stop that. And then having this clown running for president again and having all these people backing him and looking forward to whatever he thinks he wants to do. And it ain't just him, because this is going to bring all the rats out. DeSantis and all the rest of them, and just clowns. And so, but obviously we keep electing them. And we don't participate enough to really stop these people, because the folks who really care are in the majority. But if you don't participate, you don't carry no weight. You're not able to sway things from one direction to the next. But most of that to me is you don't fully realize the power you possess. You don't really realize it. You're giving up. You're not only just taking that little 35% of what you think is real power for you in your life or influence in your life. You probably then reduced it down to 20, 15%. I want you to have the maximum amount of that strength in every single thing you do. Every single thing you do. So here's the thing, is that there's no way around it. Smart is not what you are, smart is what you do. There has to be some aspect of your life that says that I've got to get to the facts, to the details, not relying on all these conspiracies or things that you think you heard or things you didn't or things you're not sure about or that kind of stuff. It is worth investigating. It is worth finding out on your own. No school has to require that. No community has to require that. I don't have to require that. If anything, I'm just going to always try to give you places to start and just hope you find your place in all of this. But the information has to lead you to this kind of strength. This is what I would like to see for each person, that it leads you to that kind of strength, that you're able to be able to feel confident to go in your job and negotiate, be able to learn the skills and things that you need so that if you can always have multiple options, both in your personal life, your finance life, your professional life, your relationship life, that you have that confidence to know that this is how it works, that it's always part of having a plan, a strategy, a process. Your brain is not going to explode. It's not. Your brain is not going to explode. I'm pretty sure of it. I ain't never heard of it. So in other words, your brain will adapt, and you will adapt, and you'll be surprised as you take more and more of that ownership in your life. What does that process look like? And that's a lot of what these type of things that I desire for people, because I don't want to live your life. I only want to be responsible for your life, but I sure want to help you live your best one, whatever that looks like. I tell people all the time, the worst thing you can do when you're around me is not ask for what you want or need, because I may be able to help. But if you ain't telling me, I don't have the obligation to ask. So you got to at least help me in some particular way. So don't hesitate to throw out, every situation, scenario, whatever. I'll do what I can to help when I can and where I can and everywhere else I can, until we can get more and more people who are just like that. I am my brother's keeper. I have no problem saying that. It makes no other sense any other way on how we look out for each other. It is in every bit of who I am to be concerned about the welfare of others. That's just as simple. We don't have to be soft. We don't have to get walked on or walked over and all the rest of the stuff to be able to do something. I'm saying that in that you find your strength. The things that is in you that have always made you great. The universe has requested your presence. The universe has requested your presence. That's how important that you are. So I'm not going to be beating up people with scripture and all the rest of that stuff and everything else, because I'll debate with that all day long. There is a bigger obligation that we have to each other. And if it only starts with me, that's fine. I can handle it. I promise you I can handle it. So if nothing else, this is my little rant for the day. I'm actually extremely frustrated with just, this is the world that we in, because it ain't just America. This is absolutely the world that we in. That the weaker people can be loud, and that makes them think they sound that important. And so, and it's not a matter of just us agreeing and disagreeing. Let's play out what they're saying. Just play it out. Just play out the whole thought process of what they're saying, instead of just stopping at the little things that sound like, oh, there must be some intelligence in it. Let's make it active. Let's make it work. Let's challenge them to make it work. Let's challenge them to see whether it produces for them. Because most of the places these same people, and I hate to put them in some classification, right? These racist white people, because, and I'm going to qualify that too. Maybe not on this one, but I'm going to qualify what makes them racist. Because they'll swear they're not. They'll swear they're not. And see, so the whole idea of is that you have the concern for what you think is a community or a nation. Or think about that. You have a concern for a community or a nation. Because if you got concern for a nation, then all this madness wouldn't even be happening in the first place. But if you only got concern for a community, specifically your community, your own community, and again, I don't care who you are, white, black, Asian, or Hispanic or otherwise. If that is your primary concern, it does not work. It does not work. Give me a place in all of the entire world where that works, and it sustains itself. It does not. It has not ever in history, collectively. So if that's going to be the case, then let's play out your scenario. Let's play out your scenario how you want the world to function and see what that yields you right back to the madness that you're trying to put on everybody else. So, but again, this shows up in everybody's lives in every different scenario. It might not be as concerning as you having to think about the other person, or next person, or everybody else. But I'm going to do everything I can to show you that this plays out in every single section and sector of our lives. So, having said that, there's not enough, and I'm going to say this, because I'm definitely a person who loves documentaries. If you're not a person that watch documentaries, just please do. I mean, like real vetted documentaries. Get information. Part of the first thing you have to do in really getting this empowerment back into yourself is you really do have to have a lot of information to compare. I don't know a shortcut to that, because the last thing you need to do is rely on anyone else to provide that in some particular way. So you got to have some process of knowing that it's important to be in the learning mindset all the time. At least once a month. Watch a documentary. I mean, a real documentary on something. And I mean, not a conspiratory documentary, but something that can show you that they've done a ton of research and kind of put all these things in place. And if you're going to watch a conspiracy documentary, then find one that's the opposite of what you're watching too. And then try to see if there's a contrast between the two. And then learn how to distinguish whether they gave you a factual timeline. That's important, because that's usually easy, definitive, definable way to understand whether somebody's BSing you or whether they just kind of skip over an entire period. They'll skip over entire decades or entire, destructive activities and everything else to only try to move their particular point or agenda. No, but when somebody's being willing to be held accountable to the timeline, that's the most identifiable thing. And you think about it, when you're mad at somebody, one of the first things you do is like, when did it happen? And then, like, where did it happen? You start trying to put the story together in the sequence. Every court case, every CSI scene and everything else, right? They try to replay it down to the details. But watch at least one documentary a month, and preferably get it down to as many as that you can take. So I'm at least again, I'm never going to come in and be storming with frustration without trying to give you some place to start. I'm Michael Fleming, and this is my attempt to do more, because I'm not going to be one of those people to do less. So you can get at me any way you can, and I have two core concepts that we're working on: the Carolines and King Streets and all those things. So constantly working on those things to try to figure out a way to really put some true ideas and programs and things into the communities around the country. And but there's a process. So I'm not saying anything to you that I'm not taking my own advice on. So I definitely wish everyone well, but don't sit on the sidelines. Not on your own life. Just don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be afraid to get knocked down, because trust me, you got the strength to get back up. You really do. Most of us do. But you got to find a safe place to feel like, hey, I can take some chances. And but learning starts that process, and it don't require a school environment to do that. Follow your curiosities. I'm dead serious. Whatever you have a moment of curiosity about, take the time to become a subject matter expert And that's what they call a SME, right? Take the time to become the subject matter expert. Learn as much about it as you possibly can. Again, I wish you well. Hopefully, I'll see y'all on the other side. Take care.